in the crowd and you're looking to switch, we've got a great offer for you. Got to plug that as always, but very excited to jump right into things so that we can make the most of this hour. And yeah, let me check the chat, make sure there's nothing to handle here. There we go. All right. So jumping right into things today, I'm going to cover the agenda and some housekeeping items. You can see the agenda here on the left side. And then on the housekeeping items, we have this form. I'm going to put it up in the chat in a second. Let's see, go to text. If I click this and show it, let's see, show it. You guys should be able to see that link. It's just beehive.link/Q&A. Lowercase q and lowercase a. I don't know if that makes a difference, but that should take you to a Google form. If we can get a little sound off in the chat that works, that would be great. But yep, basically, cool. Previous sessions are at beehive.com/webinars for Vlad, but we'll also share that link in the post-call notes. But yeah, any questions you guys have can just submit them through that Q&A link. We'll keep an eye on that as we go through the session, and then at the end of it, when we get to the Q&A, we'll pull that up and we'll take some questions from that Q&A link. So I'll leave that up for a few more minutes.
EJ, someone said they need permissions.
Oh, interesting. Let's see. I thought I had turned those on.
Looks like Tony may have jumped in.
Yeah.
The link to webinars, but I'm not sure.
Let's see. We'll make the settings. Let's see. I should have made it that you don't need any permissions. Collect email addresses. Don't connect. Oh, there we go. For some reason, it did not save the restricted Beehive users. If you refresh, you should be good to go without needing to be invited or anything like that. Cool. Amazing. We got that covered. All resources, recordings, decks, links that we talk about today will all be shared in the post afterwards. That'll be sent in the post-call email. We have a section on our blog where we upload these recordings with the transcript, the timestamps, the resources we talk about, and a downloadable version of the deck. So anything that you need there, you can also see past editions there. That's the webinars content tag if you go to blog.beehive.com or blog.beehive.com/t/webinars. That link will be shared after the call. But again, it's another place where you can view past webinars. We have them in a couple of different places. Awesome. Without further ado, we're going to just jump right into it. The typical format that we've been running these, I'll go over the notes that I have around the specific topic, and then obviously get a bunch of feedback from Daniel, who is an operator in his own right. He's run a bunch of newsletters. You might be familiar with his work doing the Daily Mustache and some other kind of more serious newsletters.
Not even qualified to write the Daily Mustache anymore since getting rid of that bad boy. I need a few weeks.
As soon as you shaved it, I know. The admin permission was just yanked. Yoink.
Terrible, terrible.
Well, we're both in that boat right now. Cool. So yeah, wanted to run this newsletter. Obviously, monetization is a topic that is super important to so many people here today, newsletter operators. At the end of the day, one of the reasons why we operate newsletters, many of us do, is to make a couple bucks, either as a side hustle, it might be your full-time job. But there's this stat that says that every dollar that goes into email marketing, and newsletters are a subcategory of email marketing, it's the highest ROI activity you can do in terms of marketing, in terms of a channel to reach customers. And the stat is something like, for every dollar you invest in email marketing, the ROI on average is about $36 to $40. So that's broadly, but I think the same can be extrapolated to newsletters, as we're going to cover a bunch of different ways that users and operators of newsletters can monetize their newsletters. Some of them are going to be more straightforward. Some of them might be new. Hopefully there's going to be something new here for everyone to take away. Cool. So laying the groundwork, we always start these with kind of some of the prerequisites, the homework you should do ahead of time before you get started. So if you've been and you've listened to any of our other webinars before, this will sound very much like a broken record, but we're probably going to say this at the beginning of every single one of our webinars. The first thing before you do anything else with your newsletter is to really understand your audience, understand the content they consume, understand who they are, really get into their heads, so that when you write your newsletter, you're really writing to an audience of one. You want to very tightly understand who that one person is that you're speaking to, because it makes everything else that we'll talk about so much more easy to ideate. If you have a very specific person in mind, you have that persona, it becomes much easier to understand, okay, is this person going to vibe with my content? Are they going to be compelled by this offer? What language should I use to get them to upgrade to a premium subscription? What type of premium content would they appreciate? The more you can really dial in, the more effective and the easier the rest of everything else to come will be. The second thing is consistent content. So consistently publishing. Newsletter publishing really is a habit, whether you're publishing daily, whether you're publishing weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. Specifically with monetization, consistency is even more important than with some of the other topics we've covered, because if you're going to be having people pay you for your content, if you're going to be selling ads, advertising, if you're going to be doing any of these things, the stakeholders involved want to know that you're going to have content that's going to continue to be produced and is going to be consistent. They don't want to invest time, they don't want to invest money in something that is not necessarily going to benefit them at the end of the day, which is what content creation is all about. The third is, this isn't so much a requirement, but can be very, very helpful if you really find a niche that you can drill down in. And this is related to that first bullet point, but in terms of monetization, there's a saying, the riches are in the niches. The more specific you can get, the more compelling your offer will be to advertisers, because there are advertisers who want to reach very, very specific groups of people. The more effective your offers will be, because you'll be able to offer very specific value to those users. And it just kind of makes everything that we're going to talk about specific to monetization much easier. That is to say, you can also monetize kind of a broader mass market newsletter, totally possible, not dissuading anyone from doing that. But one of the ways that you can, if this is your first time around or you're looking for a concept to really spin up, is to really get as specific as you can get. Really, the kind of test is, and I think that Daniel can attest to this, it's like when you think you've gone specific enough, you haven't. Get more specific, and then maybe you're closer to kind of that specificity. But it's really very, very hard to get too specific with who you're talking to, and that can help kind of spur some of the stuff we're going to talk about with monetization today. So what everyone's here for, let's get into the first item. So the first one is sponsorship opportunities. So with sponsorships, there's going to be 4 components that we kind of talk about. The first is finding sponsors, establishing sponsorship tiers, or kind of, how you're going to be targeting those sponsors, setting your rates, and determining what kind of ad placements you're going to do. Now, if you're on Beehive, we have an ad network that can do a lot of this for you. We have our sales team. We have an internal sales team that finds sponsors, that connects them with newsletters. We set the rates. They're very transparent. And we have a widget built into Beehive that allows you to place those ads. However, you may not be on Beehive. You may want to be doing your own sales selling, and that's totally fine. So for each of these, the key to finding sponsors is to identify brands that are going to align with your audience's demographics and values and psychographics and personas, so that when you go to a sponsor, so that when you go to look for sponsors, you know exactly the types of folks that are going to want to reach your audience, which kind of goes back, again, to understanding your audience. It's critical, because if you don't know who your audience is or is supposed to be, it's very hard to find the sponsors that are going to be compelled to try to work with you. Like I said, you can use Beehive for this, but there's also a bunch of other websites out there that can help connect you. Don't necessarily want to name competitors, but they're out there, and there's different platforms you can use to find different sponsors. You can also go and, if you have someone in mind that maybe doesn't necessarily actively, have like a site or something for sponsoring newsletters, many of the marketing managers and employees of companies that you may want to work with can be found online. I have a funny story that I'd love for Daniel to share when I get through this about Spindrift that can kind of illustrate this. Not specifically to a newsletter sponsorship, I don't think, but can kind of illustrate the point I'm trying to make. So the next line is a sponsorship tier. So understanding kind of what types of sponsorships you're going to be giving away. And this can be related to the different, ad placements, but really there can be different types of sponsors that you go for. You can have your big package where they're going to be the, header and kind of have prime placement of the native ad unit, kind of later in the newsletter, and you book them, maybe they're your exclusive sponsor. Other types, you might want to fill up your excess inventory with a secondary sponsor, and maybe that is priced cheaper and they're kind of a less priority sponsor. But understanding kind of what your offer is going to be to these sponsors is really important for being able to craft that message to them and understanding. We maybe can rustle up some examples, but the classic way of doing this is through a media kit where you can put together what your offers are. And that will also contain rates and ad placements as well. But you can put together a media kit and basically share this really, really easily so people can understand like what they're getting, what their different options are. A lot of times businesses will want to evaluate a couple different types of packages before choosing the one that works best for them. Next is setting rates. So typically there's a couple different models of doing this. So CPM stands for cost per mille. That's cost for 1,000 impressions, which is generally the cost it takes for 1,000 eyeballs to see the ad. So that's, the email world is generally going to be opens. But there's other ways of doing pricing as well. You can do cost per click, which is currently how the Beehiiv ad network runs. You can also do things like cost per acquisition, which gets more into maybe more of an affiliate play, which we'll talk about later. But that would be if somebody, you're getting paid for actions that a user takes off site. There's also flat rate. So you could have just pay a flat rate to have the sponsorship in the newsletter, regardless of the number of impressions, regardless of the number of clicks. The way that you can determine this is a combination of looking at competitive benchmarks across your niche or industry. There's a lot of resources by just Googling newsletter ad, CPMs and stuff like that you can get. Our standard kind of baseline CPA or CPC with the Beehiiv ad network is about $2. That can fluctuate up and down depending on who the sponsor is, depending on how good the fit is with newsletters. But this is really kind of where the negotiating comes into play between you and the sponsor. A lot of times there's kind of two categories here. Sponsors will want to work on a what's called a brand deal or a performance basis, understanding what type of sponsorship the prospect sponsor is looking for is really cool here, or really important here, because that will help you understand what their objectives are. For brand, the performance may not be as important because they just want to get the name out there and just get visibility, while other brands, maybe more D2C or B2C companies, may want to work more on a performance basis where they're able to track the very, very specific actions that users are actually taking, such as clicks or such as acquisitions on the site. And lastly, in terms of ad placements, this is probably the most basic part, but really the ad placement is just going to be what the ad looks like within your newsletter. Is it going to be a little write-up that looks like a native part of the newsletter? Is it going to be a banner? Is it going to be like the presented by logo at the top? There's a lot of flexibility here. You can really kind of create whatever inventory you want. Those are the most popular formats. But the sky's really the limit. There's some really creative things that we've seen people do, but just as a crash course, those are kind of the basic units. Daniel, what is your feedback, or what are your thoughts on what I've just covered?
Yeah, I see a few questions in the chat. Looks like Tony's replying to a few of them on just how the Beehiiv ad network works. I think with what you mentioned in the first slide on just understanding your audience and dialing in on that niche, I'll share a story about one of my newsletters I operate with my wife. We have a local newsletter, a few thousand subscribers, hyper niche. And so we have an onboarding survey where we ask people specifically about themselves. Are you a parent? Do you live here? What is interesting about this newsletter to you? Where do you find us? What are some needs you have? And so this audience is specifically parents in a very, very specific location. And the ads that we place to actually acquire subscribers are also hyper specific. And so I know that 98% of my audience is this very specific niche. So recently a inbound advertiser said, "Hey, I'd like to place an ad with your audience." It was actually a bit jarring. It was just a dog groomer, jarring in the sense of it was not necessarily an advertiser I would go after, but it was a dog groomer, and they did like luxury dog grooming. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. This opens my eyes to a potential niche of advertiser in my network that would definitely align with my audience. So what I did is I accepted the ad placement, and above the fold, before anything happened in the newsletter, I said, "Hey, parents, address the audience. Quick question, poll. Do you have a dog?" Got over 100 replies to that poll. I could identify the survey of that poll says that 63%, give or take, of my audience does have a dog. So one, the primary ad performed super well because I asked them, "Do you have a dog?" Very passive introduction to just further down in the newsletter, this awesome primary ad for dog grooming. And then I went back to the sponsor after that performance. 72 hours later, I said, "Hey, here's how your ad performed. You got a ton of unique clicks. Looks like you got some purchases from what you told me. We had a little, coupon code that people could get money off of their grooming session." And then because now I can say, "Hey, by the way, 63% of my audience has dogs. You should consider placing again." we have a long-term partnership for the whole month of October for that specific brand because they know my audience wants their product. So I think every single opportunity you have, inbound or outbound, should be seen as another opportunity to, one, understand your audience better, two, ask different questions than what you're used to asking. Like, I never would have asked my audience if they have a dog if I hadn't had this brand opportunity specifically targeting people with dogs. But now I know I could have brands like Petco and PetSmart and all these different, because I know my audience actually has pets. So I think sponsorship opportunities and knowing your audience go hand in hand.
Genius. This is exactly why I love having you join me for these, because you just have just such great relevant expertise in all of these things that you're just able to put on a master class like every time I cover a piece of content. So I'm sure that was super valuable for so many people that are watching this, and I'm excited for what's to come because yeah, that's like exactly the type of insight that I think is super valuable. So the second category we're going to get into is paid subscriptions and memberships. And so just off the top, you know, Beehive as a platform offers a very, very competitive paid subscription and membership functionality that competes with tools like Patreon or Memberful, basically any platform that provides memberships. We have a very, very competitive offering that we've spent a lot of time investing in the different types of schemes that you can deploy, the different types of price points, the different types of frequencies, all of which we'll get into in a second. But this is one of the places where I think our platform really, really shines. But there's a lot of tools you can use out there that can also help you implement these. We'll just provide some guidance that, you know, this is what you should look for in a platform if you're not on Beehive. So launching paid subscriptions and memberships. So there's a couple different things to know here. One, obviously, is the subscription model. So how are you going to position and offer? Generally, what we see a lot of is kind of a freemium to paid type of ladder, where the newsletter has a free component, but then there is a paid tier to it, whether that's a single, free or non-free, right? Free or paid, or whether it's like free and then like bronze, gold, silver. Those are types of things that people can do, to offer different levels of accessibility and different levels of content access. But the idea here is basically understanding kind of what is going to provide value to your users that would get them to take out their wallet and pay you on an ongoing basis. And so does that mean that users get access to free content, but then there's bonus content? Do they get like a preview, but have to pay to see the real meaty stuff? This all depends on your business model. You see a lot of variation based on industry. So, where bonus content is really great for things like we see a lot of AI newsletters where, they have the free content that's kind of the news and the stuff that you need to know. And then the premium content's like bonus stuff. Whereas investment newsletters or kind of more finance newsletters may have just a preview, but the meat of the content is actually part of that membership. And both of those can work really well depending on the audience, depending on the industry. But understanding kind of how you want to basically price and how your content should interact with the subscription is the first point. The next thing is understanding those price points, whether you want to do a monthly, yearly, have options for both. The price points of each of those, maybe people are willing to pay $5 a month. Maybe they're willing, if it's really valuable, to pay $10 a month. This is a screenshot here is from Ben's Bites. So he offers a one-time payment. So you can pay once and have lifetime access. That's also another valuable price point. But all of these basically come back to the kind of basis of what is your content? What is the value that you're providing to those users? And is that value at the end of the day worth more than whatever that dollar amount is? In terms of retention strategies, we have a lot of different tools, and you should have the ways to basically keep in touch and understand how users who are premium members, how you're going to keep them engaged. Obviously, it can be easy to, or maybe it's easier to keep somebody who's already paying you than to get them to come back after they've churned. So making sure that you are delivering on that value over time is super important. Providing bonus perks to really surprise and delight customers can work well. And then understanding what platform that you're using. So for us, everything is self-contained. You need a Stripe account, which is one of the biggest benefits of Beehive. Everything is in one spot. You don't need to wrangle a bunch of different platforms to do this. But if you are going to use multiple platforms, understanding, how each of those is going to interact with your content, and make sure that, like, if somebody pays you on one platform, they're going to get, access on the other platform. again, Beehive makes it super simple. We have things that are like payment paywalls where somebody hits some content that's supposed to be paid only. It's going to just have a pop-up that says, hey, this is premium content. Would you like to upgrade? We have the pages that look very similar to what we have here in this image from Ben's Bytes, where you have a dedicated URL where you can send users to upgrade. You should have ways to understand when users are upgrading so you can customize your communications through automations to be able to respond to those users in real time to welcome them to the program. If they downgrade from a paid feature, it can be really useful to have like a downgrade survey to understand why and collect that feedback and understand how you can refine your offering for the future. And in a second, we're going to get into kind of the different ways you can provide paid content that's meaningful. But in terms of this slide, this is more kind of the nuts and bolts of how you're actually going to deliver and set up a paid membership program. These are the kind of core parts. Pretty basic at the end of the day. It's, you have content that you want someone to pay for, and you want to put that offer in front of them and make it compelling so that they will pay you. As we get into the premium content offers, premium content can include things like exclusive interviews, detailed guides, courses, behind the scenes content, industry reports. One of the example here I actually took from Lenny's podcast, which is on one of our competitors on Substack, but he actually works with Perplexity, the AI company, and announced last week that anybody who's a premium subscriber to his newsletter will also get 1 year of Perplexity Pro. So just like a real-time example of how premium offers can be anything. At this point, if you're using Perplexity and you get a year free, that $20 a month that you're paying for Lenny's newsletter now maybe costs nothing. And so, or if you're already using Perplexity but you like Lenny's newsletter, if you switch over and start paying Lenny, you're going to get that access for free as well. And so Perplexity gets more users, Lenny gets more paid subscribers. Both of them win in this case. And it's just a great example of a very creative content offer. But this can be extra newsletters. So say you send like a Sunday edition and, maybe you have a weekly newsletter. You have one that goes out on Wednesday. You can add a second that goes out on Sunday only to premium users. You can have, like we said at the beginning, content that is only accessible to premium users. And Beehive, this kind of gets to the premium paywall thing, but we have the ability to actually show content based on users' premium status. So you can actually, within a single email, highlight the different sections that maybe are only available to premium users, or you can add a call to action for users who are not on premium features to say, hey, like you would be seeing this content if you were a premium user, and it can act as a inducement to upgrade. I jumped the gun a little bit on the bundles and packages, but that's something that, the example I shared a second ago is an perfect example of a bundle. I believe that Ben Tossell with Ben Bytes does something similar. I don't recall off the top of my head what it is, but there's another newsletter called Every that does this really well. You pay one subscription membership and you get a bunch of different newsletters. So they've actually partnered with multiple people to provide, multiple premium newsletters at one cost. This really comes down to creativity. I think it'd be interesting in the chat to hear some of the most creative bundles and kind of inducements people have created to get people to upgrade. But then again, back to the engagement and feedback. The key here is to always be listening to your audience and engage them. Things like surveys and polls, as Daniel noted, work really, really well. Understanding what's going to actually compel your user. This can be used in kind of the same way that he said. You can ask users, what is your favorite tool? What is your favorite who's your favorite creator, and you could do some sort of maybe bonus content. It really depends, but the idea here is providing value to your users that is going to be unique enough to get them to upgrade. Daniel, I know you talk to a lot of folks who are running very sophisticated newsletters. What are some of the thoughts that you have on premium offers and premium subscriptions largely?
Yeah, my favorite one is Community Angle, because it's very low lift to start. Yeah. So let me caveat, running communities is not low lift, but to start one is low lift. There's tons of different platforms to choose from. Many of them do not require money right off the bat. Slack has a free version, etc. But I like the Community Angle. The way I've seen it done is something to the effect of, hey, you get the community for free if you upgrade now, or even some, period of community launch where it starts free. And then once you entice people with the actual value add of the community, you turn that community into a paid. I've seen, so there's the community angle. I think that's a really creative way to offer value without necessarily changing your content strategy in the newsletter itself. I've also seen, and this is one I actually personally want to try, is have a free newsletter, which is it has to be really, really valuable newsletter for this to work. But the paid portion is accessing the archive. So the newsletter is always free. If you want to sign up and subscribe to the newsletter, you're going to get it in your inbox. There's no questions asked. But everything on the website is paywalled. And so, if you're offering like educational content that over time is teaching some specific thing, or even it's like how to use AI tools, or it's, if you fill in the blank, anything valuable enough for you to want to pay for it, you basically get access to that library by paying either a monthly fee or like a lifetime subscription. And I think that funnel is just a free newsletter. And so I've seen people do this and generate really meaningful income. And so I've considered trying it myself, but I think that's the lowest lift way to offer paid subscriptions.
Those are both incredible levers that you can pull. Extremely creative, but also, are great kind of flywheels that demonstrate value. You're able to really position it and put the value behind, some nominal amount. One other thing that you thought of, it's kind of related to that, would be like an email course. We see that a lot, where it's like you have to subscribe, and then you're going to get, some sort of course that is maybe time limited. You get 6 emails that teach you how to do something for, either a one-time fee or, an ongoing subscription for as long as, you want access, you can pay for it. But to that note, look for things coming in the new year. In 2025, we're really beefing up our digital products offerings at Beehive. Constantly looking for different ways to kind of facilitate these very creative, very kind of a little bit more sophisticated levers of offering premium content. And it's something that we're always on the lookout for and building into the platform to make it more valuable to users like the ones that are on this call, like you. Amazing. Moving next to, the title here for sponsored co-registration may seem a little bit intimidating. It's kind of the best way to kind of neutrally describe what we describe as our Boost network, or if you've used one of our competitors, like Sparkloop, they have something that's similar. But essentially, unpacking this for anybody who may not be familiar, sponsored co-registration or co-reg is a system where you are offering an opportunity to somebody who has first signed up to your newsletter to get some sort of offer. In the newsletter world, that offer is subscribing to another newsletter that's willing to pay you for, access. So with our Boost network, the very, very straightforward way that it works is, you have a newsletter, somebody comes to your newsletter and signs up. After they've signed up to your newsletter, they see a pop-up like the one that's on the screen that asks, do you want to also subscribe to one of these newsletters that I'm recommending? Each of these sponsored newsletters have said, I'm willing to pay $2 for an engaged subscriber, or $1.80 for an engaged subscriber, or $3 for an engaged subscriber. They're willing to pay you, the publisher, that amount if somebody joins the newsletter and subscribes and remains engaged and is a valuable part of the email list. And basically, they can grow their list very passively. You can make money by doing this sponsored recommendation. In this case, at the end of the day, the user should win, because if you're recommending newsletters that actually have, either complementary topics or subject matter or provide a lot of value, then the user should end up in a better place where they're getting better content. They're, happier than they were just before with one newsletter. And everybody wins. List growth, monetization, happy customer, no losers here. Specific to Beehive, we have a very sophisticated way for folks to basically measure the engagement. And so that's one of the unique things about our network, is that we've reduced the amount of spam, and we've reduced the amount of waste of money, I guess you could say, by having this algorithm that judges and assesses engagement, which is really, really useful for making sure that the whole system works. Because as long as people who are growing are getting good quality subscribers, that benefits the people who are trying to monetize, because they're going to want to spend more money. And that's what's made Beehive's Boost network one of the best in the industry, if not the best, in my opinion. This can work really, really well. The more you're growing, kind of generally, if you haven't seen one of our growth secrets webinar, we talk a lot about growth tactics, but if you're growing really, really quickly, this is a really valuable way to just turn on monetization right away. I will be very transparent and say if you have kind of a very small list, or if you're growing, maybe 2 or 3 newsletters or 2 to 3 subscribers a day, this isn't a silver bullet. We're not trying to say like this is going to be kind of the magic bullet that's going to solve monetization issues. But if you do have that product market fit with your newsletter and you are growing sustainably, this can be a very, very lucrative way to just kind of throw gas on the fire. One of the ways that we really like to promote this is if you are using something like paid ads to grow, which is a great strategy. We'll be doing a session on that in the next couple of weeks. But if you're using paid ads to grow, that's going to cost you, for every click that comes to your site, maybe $1.50, $2, $3. This sort of kind of process, or sponsored co-reg, can really offset the cost of those subscribers, and depending on whatever your lifetime value is of users, can make the model work amazingly. If your lifetime value is $5 and you can cut your acquisition costs from $2 to 50 cents, or from $2 to 0, that's transformative for a business. The big thing to look out for here is that there are some folks who basically may not disclose that those sponsored co-regs are paid for. So we are very clear that anybody who is being sponsored here, there's the little sponsor badge you can see very transparently. This is something that's required by the FTC, so it's a legal consideration. It's also an ethical consideration, so that you respect your readers and let them know that the recommendation you're making, there is some sort of monetary trade-off there, and not everyone does that. That's something that they're supposed to do, but not everyone does, and it's something that just makes it kind of above board for everyone, and that we are very proud of offering. Moving on next, affiliate marketing. This is something I find that a lot of newsletter creators are a little bit less familiar with, and there's a lot of different forms that this can take. In some ways, the previous slide, this came after that one, because in some ways co-reg is a little bit like affiliate marketing. But affiliate marketing is simply basically recommending and offering some sort of offer to your audience, and if they take it up, they get some sort of reward. In that way, it's very similar to like the CPA model of the sponsorship I talked about before. But there's a lot of different companies that do this. I have an image here from Amazon Associates, which is Amazon's affiliate program. In that case, they make it really easy. If you just you link to an Amazon product with your link, you're going to get credit if the person who clicks that link makes a sale. There's networks that work with hundreds and thousands of companies out there to offer these sorts of affiliate deals. There's ShareSale, Impact, Rewardful, PartnerStack are kind of the big ones. But basically, you can go to those sites, sign up as a publisher, and you can view a gallery of all of these companies who are willing to basically pay you if you're referring them traffic or referring them customers. The key here is that you basically choose affiliate partners that align with your audience. Again, going back to that first slide, if you understand your audience, it makes it very, very easy to understand who would be a good fit and who wouldn't be a good fit. And the key point here is also ensuring that the alignment is one that is like respectful and kind of trading value, not one that is like too salesy or users will be able to see through a newsletter that it just seems to be just like overly monetized, and the only point is for you to make money and not to provide users value. So the best way we see these work is true, honest reviews, recommendations, things that you would want to use yourself, or companies that you would want to work with yourself. And think of it more of like an ad that you're actually recommending, that you would be proud to stand behind. Important to you here is also disclosing to your readers, kind of like we were talking about in the sponsored co-reg section, that you want users to know that if they click a link, you may be compensated for it. It's just a respectful thing to do. A lot of times people get upset if they think that a recommendation is entirely organic, but it turns out that it's not. It's not a big issue. I think most users are comfortable with a link being an affiliate link, but most want to at least know that it is an affiliate link. These commission structures for affiliate networks can vary. There's some that work on a cost per click basis, some work on a CPA basis. In that way, they're kind of similar to the ad networks in that way. The difference being that you don't necessarily have to work directly with a company. You're not having to reach out and find some marketing person at some big brand. These companies have set up these programs expressly with the purpose of reaching publishers like you, and in connecting with your audience. So this is something that Beehive uses. Actually, we have a partner program. We don't call it our affiliate program, but we do call it our partner program. And so if we have people who have had a successful experience with Beehive, we encourage them to share their experiences, share the success they've had on Beehive with their users. And if they send us a customer who ends up paying, we will split revenue from that customer 50-50 with our affiliate for 12 months. It's one of the most generous affiliate offers out there on the market, but you can also find very similar offers from lots of different software platforms. From most tools and companies you work with are going to have some sort of program like this. And so you can either do it purely of like, hey, like here's the affiliate links that I'm sharing, or here's a cool product that I found, or, kind of going back to the first slide, some people actually will set it up. So like if you are working with, if you're working with Beehive, for example, and you're a partner, you could actually create an ad that says like presented by Beehive, and you could have a native section. So it looks like you're running an ad from Beehive, but you're just using the partner link, the affiliate link. So you're not having to necessarily, work with someone from our ad team. You can spin this up as much as you want, whenever you want. There's no delay, there's no wait, there's no approvals or anything like that. That's something that we used in the beginning of the company. I think we might have kind of built-in stuff where like you can actually access native ads or house ads within our ad network. But if you were trying to promote Company X, who is an affiliate program, you can basically run it like a pseudo ad and make it very apparent and make it clear. It's a good way to implement those. The next one is something that we've had an idea for a long time. So this is something that Beehive does not offer, but can be implemented pretty easily. It would just be, you would be doing the legwork for this, but this is something that with any luck, we will tackle at some point in the next year. But job boards can be really, really valuable and lucrative. It's really incredible how much companies are willing to pay to hire, good talent. And so job boards are a way for newsletter publishers like you to really get into the game and make some of that money from HR budgets that, are either going to recruiters or going to places like LinkedIn to post jobs. The value here is, specifically, I'd say more for more niche newsletters that kind of have a very, very specific, tight, audience. But, anybody who has like that kind of subject matter relevance can deploy these. But basically you can reach out to companies saying, hey, like, I think that I have this very targeted audience. I think that, if you posted a job, I could find a qualified person and they will pay you for that, and there's different deals you can work out where, you might get paid a larger amount if a person actually gets hired. You can run it almost like an ad where they pay you just for the placements. There's a couple different ways you can do it, but essentially it's a great way for you to take an audience that is very, very specific, has maybe specific skills. If it's like a programmer, newsletter. This example is from a remote job newsletter. The newsletter is all about remote jobs. So of course, anybody who wants a remote job is going to be reading this newsletter, which is why they have those offers. I realize I've gone through a couple slides and I haven't asked Dan for his opinion. I've seen the nods and just kind of kept rolling. I feel like this could be something that could be really interesting for your very, very niche local newsletter, for local companies looking to hire. Maybe, part-time if someone's like a stay-at-home mom or something like that. I don't know. This is something maybe you've thought about, but I want to give you a chance to jump in with anything we've talked about over the last few minutes.
Yeah, I mean, the affiliate angle is interesting. Of course, shout out Beehive partner program. I think there's more opportunity for affiliate revenue than people, particularly those just getting started, might understand or might realize right off the bat. Companies will pay you to be a product evangelist. And so something EJ noted that I'll just kind of, call back to, the best affiliate partnerships are the ones where you're already a fan of that product. It is, we all know the different influencers that just, name drop whatever affiliate they're partnering with. And you're like, do I, should I necessarily take too much, put too much weight on what they said? But I have some affiliate partnerships with different brands, Apollo, AG1, Spindrift, and like these are all products that I used already. I won't talk too much about Spindrift. I think there's a section for that at some point. But like I love these brands, and so now I have these partnerships with them. Beehive, I was a Beehive evangelist for months before I worked here. I was a paying user. I had clients that paid me to operate their Beehive newsletters. I was converting people from other platforms to Beehive. And now, of course, I'm not an affiliate. I just am an employee. But I think that's kind of my thought on affiliate marketing is there are, like, companies will pay you if you love their product and are telling people about it. It's not rocket science. So I would say look after that. The job board, my only thought on that is you can actually create, I'll call it a pseudo job board with the functionality of Beehive right now. I
100%.
know
Yeah.
people that are just either it's an HTML snippet on a custom page, or they're dropping, specific like timely either blog posts or even an email, daily or weekly updates. There's even Jake Schonberger, who works here, has a daily jobs. It's called Get a Job newsletter, and it's literally a job board in the form of a newsletter. That's a daily
forgot about
Beehive
that.
newsletter. Yeah, yeah. So do we have traditional like job boards? No, I agree with EJ. It's a great idea. I think we've tossed it around many times. We're very good at saying no to things so that we build the right things. So that's why we've not built it yet. But I think someday we might build it. And I just think there's particularly these categorically niche newsletters like AI, or finance or local, could have a lot of really strong proposition for placing jobs anywhere on their site or in their newsletter at some point. So there's something there. I think job boards are an interesting idea.
Yeah, well, so Dan, I didn't have a specific slide for the Spindrift story, but I think that this would be something that would be really interesting and funny for the audience. Can you share kind of how that came to be?
Yeah, so I'm okay. Let me back up. I'll try to make this as short as possible. It's 12:43. Let's go till 12:45 on this story specifically. I drink Spindrift. I've been on a health kick for kind of a year and a half. I had this terrible back surgery. I had to, lose some weight, and it was bad. So I was recovering from that, trying to be healthy, trying to just get moving, and I cut out a bunch of stuff. So this was February of 23. Started drinking Spindrift like nobody's business. It was like every day I was having Spindrift. Fast forward to this year, and I had I'll call it a midlife crisis. I'm 31 years old. So midlife, maybe not quite, but quarter life, I'm not going to be 120 when I die. So like somewhere in there, I had a crisis, decided, yikes, my dad's heart is not doing well. I want to make sure mine is doing well. I want to be healthy. Drank a bunch of Spindrift. And at one point I tweeted at them with this new product launch. I was like, hey, I drink Spindrift. You have a newsletter. Let's make something happen. I'm skipping a lot, but basically they just started shipping me tons of Spindrift, like boxes and boxes of Spindrift. I know the people that work there now. It's a quarterly thing, and or as much as they want. They're shipping me like baby clothing, hats, totes, Spindrift. It's an awesome thing. I will gloat about how much free Spindrift I have till the day I die. So the offsite that Beehive had in Montreal, I reached out to Spindrift. I said, hey, I would love for you to send as much Spindrift as you're willing to for about 80 people in Montreal. Can you make it happen? They're like, unfortunately, we don't ship internationally, but if we can ship it to someone that's driving, we can do that. So I was like, hey, EJ, you're driving to Montreal, right? So he's in New York. He said, yeah, I am. I was like, let me get your address. Spindrift's going to ship 8 boxes of 8 packs. Like, I don't know, like 200 Spindrifts to your house. I need you to bring them in your car to Montreal. Unfortunately, they showed up after he had already left. And so he got back from the offsite to how many boxes was it, EJ? It was like all like Florida roof
four
in front
cases.
of your apartment.
It was like, yeah, it was like close to 90 something. Like it was so much.
Insane
like
amount of
infinite amount of Spindrift.
So
That
he's
was
been
months
drinking
ago.
Spindrift for like 4 months, right?
It's been great. Every
He's had
time I
videos
wanted,
like we'll have these meetings, and he'll do this number with his camera, and there will be like 8 Spindrifts lined up in front of him, and he won't even mention it. He'll just do it just for me to know that he has all the Spindrift that we did not get to consume at the offsite. So
Oh,
1
so
minute late on my 12:45 timeline.
yeah.
But
So
that's the story.
Spindrift are they're seltzers basically. They're just regular seltzers that have like juice in them, so they taste good. They're a little bit healthier. And so yeah, they're good. So I've just been like, anytime I want to drink. Anyway, funny story how you can use affiliate marketing to like basically get some free swag, and sometimes your friends and coworkers can benefit from that free swag as well, to great effect. So perfect example there. As we're closing up, we'll do this one for about 2 or 3 more minutes, and then we'll have about 10 minutes for the Q&A at the end. I think this has been actually great. We're doing really, really well on time. So the last way that you can monetize a newsletter is a little bit different than the ones we've talked about before, but would be through an exit or an acquisition. I'm very proud that 3 of my 4 interns that I've had since I've been here at Beehive have each started and sold newsletters after they joined Beehive. Very impressive feat in itself. All in the five figures, so not a huge like Milk Road exit, in the millions, but for college kids, that's pretty good. That's a good amount of beer money. And so, how does this work? Basically, if you have an audience that brands or people want to reach, they're willing to pay money for it. There's a bunch of different sites where you can go and post a newsletter that you have and potentially sell it. And so I want to talk about this here. So there are some people that we've met who start newsletters, build them just to sell them. So, and they've just done this rinse and repeat as a way to make some money. And it's not spammy. They're legit newsletters. There's a lot of effort put into them. The engagement's really, really high. Obviously, the better the engagement, the more you'll be able to sell it for. And it's a huge thing that I'm very proud of with Beehive, that I think we have more acquisitions of newsletters than any other platform in the planet. I can't imagine that it's not the case, because I know we've had like at least 3 or 4 dozen in the last year, and I haven't seen nearly the same number of posts about people sharing that they've sold their newsletters on other platforms. But basically, there's a couple of things that go into this. So the valuation basics. Generally, the value of a newsletter is determined by a couple different factors: subscriber count, the engagement rate, whether that's open rate, click-through rate, the different revenue streams. So if you have a bunch of these revenue streams set up and it's spinning off a lot of cash, that's obviously going to make it more attractive. Brand recognition, the niche audience. So if you have a very, very specific niche audience where you're talking to 10,000 rocket scientists every week, that's going to be super, super valuable for some brand or company that wants to get in front of that audience. That kind of bleeds into the second one: who buys newsletters? This could be media companies, venture capital firms in some cases, not as much, but sometimes competitors, other newsletters acquiring other newsletters to consolidate. I know Big Desk Energy bought one of the folks that works over at WeFunder, kind of very, very strong audience overlap. So Tyler, our CEO, bought this, newsletter that had this great audience overlap and was able to, make his list a little bit bigger. Obviously, there's considerations in there. You want to basically let the audience know that they've been acquired, that you're giving them an opportunity to stay opted in and everything like that. But it's a very, very simple, straightforward process. Some people who are just entrepreneurs, they want to find businesses that are generating cash flow, and they just want to have assets that generate cash. And so that might be a potential acquire. You can find a lot of these on sites like Flippa, MicroAcquire, or Deuce, and that's Duuce. That's the screenshot that I shared now. I think they specifically have kind of indexed on Beehive newsletters specifically, so I think they actually have dedicated kind of areas of their site that cover Beehive newsletter sales. But yeah, basically, in preparation for selling a newsletter, you want to make sure that the operations, like kind of what goes into creating the newsletter each week, all of the different accounts, all of that is buttoned up. You have the ability to really transfer ownership, whether that's giving access to an email address and a password, whether it's kind of more, if you have like an LLC around it, there's maybe a little bit more work that goes into it. You might want to consult a lawyer in that case, but basically you want to make sure that you can kind of really hand it off and make it so that the transition is easy. Beehive can help you on our side if you do want to consolidate or transfer a newsletter to another organization. We do have ways that we can facilitate that process. The idea behind that, though, is that buyers want to know that like there's at least some sort of sustainability with the business, that what they're buying is not basically all the publisher's just like time and energy, because if they bought it, then it obviously goes to nothing. You want to be able to show that this newsletter, with a process behind it, can continue to operate effectively and efficiently. In terms of maximizing your purchase value, again, I kind of went into this before, but you want to have highly engaged audience. They don't want to see that it's like spammy or low open rates, low engagement rates. If you can show strong growth, strong engagement, and high cash flow, that's kind of the 3 parts of, and I guess standardized processes would be the 4 parts that would go into really fetching a very good price. At the end of the day, any investor buying an asset wants to de-risk the kind of future expected cash flows. And so you can de-risk that by showing these signals of strong audience fit and audience growth, strong engagement, multiple diversified income streams, and standardized processes where they can just step in, continue those processes, and see their investment increase in value. There are some things that come into post-sale considerations. I'd say the biggest ones that we see are owner earnouts, and less so common with us, and I think now they probably aren't legal. I'm not following super closely, but sometimes buyers will want to include things like earnouts where you're required to keep on working with the newsletter for a certain amount of time before you earn the entire payout. So this is something I've seen several times where, maybe a newsletter is being bought for $2 a subscriber and the newsletter has 25,000 subscribers. So the purchase price is $50,000. And the person who's selling the newsletter might get, 20,000 up front and then the remaining balance of 30,000 6 months later. They're continuing to work and operate the newsletter like normal. But the acquirer wants to know that like the transition will go smoothly. And so they have like an earn out clause there. But yeah, that's not, it really comes down to the negotiation. Negotiations can be pretty flexible in terms of what you're willing to do, what you're willing to give up. But yeah, I'd say, Daniel, I don't know if you've sold newsletters before, but we've worked with a lot of people who are buying and selling newsletters. Is there anything I missed here?
I think the newsletter, I can't even think of the calculator tool, Newsletter Navigator.
Newsletter Navigator,
worth, is worth a shout out. And if
Yep.
Tony or anyone in the follow-ups can include that link, it's just very like easy, high level calculations to understand LTV of subscribers, cost per acquisition, really just understanding like the P&L and business model of a newsletter. If you're looking at potentially selling or buying it at some point, this is obviously not most people, not everyone is creating a newsletter to sell it, but if you are looking at buying or selling a newsletter, understanding the revenue of that newsletter and the forecast of what is possible based on its current engagement and ecosystem is really important. I don't have much more to say than that at this moment.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Well, that brings us now to the Q&A. I will take a look real quick at this other sheet. So, yeah, let's see. I'm going to see let me just grab a screenshot. I'll send this to you, Daniel, so you can see what I'm working with here. Actually, I'm going to have a hard time doing that. Let's see if I can just have some here. Okay, so setting up a new newsletter for deliverability, what is the ideal email to send one from? Is it one from my domain or from Beehive, or to set up something custom? This is, these questions don't necessarily have to be related to monetization. I'll keep on going down the list, and so maybe we'll get to some. The answer is pretty straightforward. We always recommend that either you send from the shared Beehive domain, so mail.beehive.com. We send, I think, 750 million emails from that domain a month. So it's a huge, very entrenched reputation. And so adding your new newsletters, whether you're sending an extra 100, sending an extra, 100,000, it's going to be a relatively small drop in the bucket compared to that massive volume. And so the reputation, you can really kind of rely on that being standard. If you do want to go to a custom domain, we do recommend keeping the sending domain separate from your top level domain. And I've never been 100% clear on why that is, but our deliverability experts insist that that is the best practice. It has something to do with just isolating risk in case something happens with your main domain. And what I mean by that is if your domain is beehive.com, it would be like, newsletter.beehive.com being the sending domain. Maybe your newsletter is listed at, newsletter just www.beehive.com, and you'd send from mail or newsletter.beehive.com. You obviously wouldn't be able to send from mail because we already send from mail. How do I know whether my audience is ready for me to set up paid subscriptions? This is a great question. Dan, you want to grab that one?
Yep. Ask them. I was flirting with the idea of starting a paid subscription, and I had a poll that had 3 options, and I said, would you pay, or what would you pay for like additional content in real life events, blah, blah, blah. So this was around 500 subscribers. I did this. I had a $2 a month, $5 a month, or nothing. And like 90% of the people said nothing. So I was like, cool, not going to launch anything right now. And so you just ask them. I don't think you have to overcomplicate it.
Amazing. I love that. I mean, for my part, I probably would say something very similar. I'd say that there's really also not really any downside to creating a premium subscription or paid subscription at any point. As Daniel went over with the different ways you can do that, whether it's through community, whether it's kind of some of these other different tactics we mentioned. With something like Beehive, you're not paying anything extra to have that. And so if you are publishing consistently, even if you have a relatively small audience, it can be a kind of cherry on top if you're very small, but it also can start those learnings and get them going sooner rather than later. It's just one of those things. You don't want it to take it from your main kind of objective. So if you're still trying to find that content market fit, you don't want it to be a distraction. But once you're kind of in that groove, you know who your audience is, you're publishing consistently. I typically don't see a downside in doing that. At the very least, at best, you're getting people who are paying you for that premium access. At worst, you're getting learnings so that as you build your newsletter, you know what you need to do in order to get to a point where you can successfully make that offer more compelling. I'm going to run through a bunch of quick ones that are not so much ad related, or monetization related, but any definite timeline on launching job boards on Beehive. I want to clarify, I'm going to get yelled at by our CEO and product team. We don't have that prioritized. It's something that has been an idea since literally the day I joined 3 years ago that I think that my guess would be that we pick up at some point in the future. It just seems like a really good additive monetization feature. The thing is, we have so much really, really cool stuff that is actually way more exciting than job boards coming down the pipe, if you can imagine that. So it's not so much of like us kicking the can. It's that we have so much great stuff that is so much more pressing and is going to wow you even more that it just kind of gets pushed back. And so that is to say, keep tuned in, but it wouldn't be till at the very soonest like Q2, Q3 of next year, and that's if we immediately decided to implement it. So I don't want to set any unrealistic expectations. That being said, Dan had the great point. You can really do a job board at any point in your own newsletter. It doesn't really require anything for us to build. If you wanted to do a proof of concept, you can add the links, you can make the deals, those things all can work without kind of a dedicated tool. And I suspect that's probably why we've kind of kicked the can, just because it's one of those things that if you have a job board and you want it, you could do it today without dedicated tooling for it. Survey capabilities seem a little bit more limited compared to other platforms. I'd say that's fair. We definitely have plans to make improvements. We're constantly improving different parts of the platform. The goal here is for surveys to kind of get you to a point of like viability, and that there's other platforms whose entire purpose of being is like surveys and forms and stuff like that, and we do hope and expect to compete more heavily with those, like SurveyMonkey and those. But for now, we've really focused on getting surveys to like a point of viability where if you're publishing a newsletter, they can be performant and useful to you. But we will keep that in mind and are always improving that. There's a note here about designing the newsletter with Beehive. I think we're actually going to have a design webinar coming up in November. In the meantime, I can commit that we will include more design resources in the notes when this gets published online in a day or two. We have a ton of resources on our YouTube channel. We have a bunch of different folks that we work with who are great designers that we can share links to as well for inspiration. And then lastly, any idea when Beehive Ad Network will have flat fee ads instead of just pay-per-click? Yes, this is something we discussed in our Q4 meeting just yesterday, actually. We are aiming to have both CPM and like flat fee and a couple different models in like by the end of Q4, sometime in Q1 of 2025. So coming very, very soon. We've completed the initial like proof of concept of a Beehive Pixel, which is operating and is being tested right now. And we're building out the functionality for a Pixel so that for advertisers, they will have more visibility into the performance of ads. And so with that kind of concept of a Pixel, it makes it much more easy for us to basically prove out value, which unlocks some of those other different models. So definitely keep an eye out there. Really appreciate everyone's time. We're coming up with the last 45 seconds of this hour-long session. I want to thank my guest, Dan Burke. He's amazing, been amazing as always, such a wealth of knowledge. Go follow him on X, follow him on LinkedIn. He's a mensch. Thank you all for being such a great audience. We're going to download the chat and we're going to mine it for future webinar topics. Any questions you guys asked, we'll be creating resources around. So you guys are truly so incredibly important to the success of these webinars, and so appreciative to have you here today. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your Tuesday.